Greetings to you, Crocoduck Army, or how's it, as they say in South Africa. I just got back from South Africa a couple weeks ago, and I learned a great deal about the country in my 10 days there. Most people are very friendly and mostly happy to make conversation with a tourist. I asked one Uber driver why his windshield had a huge crack all the way across it. He said that he was in Pretoria and some taxi drivers bashed it in because he was an Uber driver. I asked him if a Burger King opens up next to a McDonald's in South Africa, do the McDonald's employees break the windows of the Burger King? He found this amusing and said, no, that's only for Uber drivers. I googled some stories when I got back to my hotel. The taxi drivers are upset not just because they have competition, but because Uber didn't consult with them first, and they want some kickbacks for allowing them to operate. Clearly, economic opportunities are a bit limited. For decades, South Africa had a system known as apartheid. It was legalized white supremacism, and it was incredibly cruel. About 3.5 million black people were forcibly moved from their homes into essentially reservations, and they had no political or social power in South Africa. Voting rights were stripped and cross-racial marriages were banned. With 80% of the population with less access to a good education and economic opportunities, the economy only worked for white people. And now that apartheid is over, change is still coming slowly, partly because it only ended in 1994. It's like the Jim Crow South. Society doesn't turn on a dime. Unemployment is at 27% and poverty is widespread. But they have tons of natural resources, mostly from mining diamonds, platinum, gold, and more. The government squanders them and does not keep their promises to the people as they line their own pockets. Police take bribes because they're paid very poorly, so most who can afford it have a security system of electric fences and alarms backed by an armed security force who will show up to your house much faster than the police if you have a break-in. The social structure remains very imbalanced. These imbalances help lead to very high crime rates. In the US, over 15,000 people were murdered last year. Over 18,000 people were murdered in South Africa last year. South Africa's population is about 1/6 that of the US. It's not a good math problem to figure out. We would need to have about 100,000 murders a year in order to have that same murder rate. It makes South Africa number 8 in the world, far worse than many countries that are far worse off economically. While many of them are gang-related shootings in places tourists would never go, a lot of them are just opportunistic street crimes like carjacking or armed robbery that turns into murder, which makes it all the more scary. It's certainly heavily concentrated in the poorer areas, poor people killing other poor people. But the middle class and above all have very secure houses or apartment buildings, as I mentioned, because house break-ins are also widespread. You may be wondering if there's a leader that can help improve this. The answer is maybe, but not anyone who's in power right now. In terms of politics, literally nobody I met there seemed to like Trump, unsurprisingly. However, their own president is also terribly corrupt, and everyone knows it. They basically have no mechanism to get rid of him until 2019, though, even though he's received literally hundreds of corruption charges, which is too bad. There's a lot of uncertainty around what Zuma, their current president, will do and how much he will permanently damage the economy. Also, contrary to what some American conservatives have been peddling, especially around the time of his death, Nelson Mandela, who was a driving force in ending the apartheid regime, was widely respected by black and white South Africans alike. Unfortunately, Zuma is no Mandela, and everyone knows it. Zuma is the head of Mandela's party, the African National Congress, or ANC, and many people still vote for the ANC out of solidarity for Mandela's legacy. In 2019, the ANC chooses a leader again, and Zuma is almost certain to go. And then again, I remember last November. Don't let up and make sure he is gone, my South African friends. It was a work trip, but I had a weekend to go on safari, which I took advantage of in beautiful Pilanesberg National Park, a couple hours northwest of Johannesburg. Seeing African animals in the wild was something I'll never forget. I saw lions, including a lioness and her 4 cubs, a leopard, a herd of zebras, giraffes, elephants, rhinos, hippos, a leopard, a troop of baboons, wildebeest, impalas, jackals, kudu, and other deer-like animals, a few types of rodents, and a number of different bird species. I'll link to a video with some footage of my trip. I know I spent a lot of time talking about the difficulties of life in South Africa, but I already plan to go back with Mrs. Zonstar sometime in the next few years, and as an experienced traveler, I have few worries. It's a place with a ton of potential, really fantastic friendly people, beautiful scenery, and no real language barrier aside from some different accents of English. If you're ready to start exploring the developing world, South Africa is a good place to start.